recording.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff.
Said it couldn't be done.
What?
We're back again.
Who said what and why?
Just kidding. It was me.
Okay.
Welcome to Conversations in Commerce, where we have candid conversations about technology, e-commerce, print, and the supply chain, and we try to have a little fun in the process. I'm your host, Andrew Alford, and with me today is our co-host, Alyssa. Hey, Alyssa, how's it going?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good. I understand you've been really busy since the last show. Matter of fact, you've been working on a pretty powerful collaboration with Vanguard Direct. Is that right?
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working with Vanguard on an article regarding a project that they've done with the United Way of Connecticut 211 and the Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. So essentially what they did is they had Gizmo, who is a therapy dog. Here's a picture of Gizmo right here. He's a therapy dog in Connecticut schools. And they created a kit with different products in it. You know, some of them had like stress balls in them, a stuffed dog shaped exactly like Gizmo. And all of this was to promote and to educate children on mental health care, kind of, get rid of that the stigma behind it early on.
That's a really good application, Alyssa. When you think about it, when you think about children's health, you don't necessarily consider their mental well-being. And a program like this is sorely needed in a world where, we're mostly concerned about the physical needs of a child. But the reality is, just like adults, they go through periods of mental health crises and their own needs. So kudos. That's a really great program. Kudos to the folks at Vanguard Direct, John and his team, and United Way for pulling that together. What an incredible process and program they put on. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce today's guest. We have an exciting show lined up for you today. Today's guest is the Managing Director for Corporate Development Associates. He considers himself a millennial trapped in a baby boomer's body. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. He is a husband. He's a dad. He's a grandpa. He is a member of the Ben Franklin Honor Society, which is an incredible honor in itself. He was the chairman of PER for years and years and years. And recently I had the personal privilege of awarding him with Brand Chain's President's Award. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Roger Bugg. Hey, Roger.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Roger. So I've had the pleasure of working with you in various different roles across the gamut. I'd say, serving across, serving on the same board together. We've shared the same industry insights for the past, 20 plus years. It's been a minute. I don't want to date either one of us, but I'd be really surprised if most of our viewers and listeners haven't interacted with you at some point in their own careers. But for those of you who don't know you, and to enrich the knowledge of the folks that do know you, share a little bit about your origin story. In other words, how did you get to where you are today, and what got you into the field of M&A?
It's been a fun ride because I actually started real young. I've been in print business my entire career. I joke with people and tell them that I started when I was 5 because my dad was a printer for 33 years. And he was working in this weekly newspaper shop, and he brought home a crate that was from a letterpress that their company had purchased. And they let Dad bring the crate home, and it became my playhouse. My brothers and I playhouse in the backyard. I've got a picture of myself when I'm 5, and over my left shoulder it says Heidelberg. And 5 or 10 years later, I was actually running the press that came in. And I started the career. I got into forms in 71. I worked with some really great companies over the next 45, 50 years. And then in 2017, I wanted to stay in the business, but get out of what I was doing, out of the manufacturing side. And I was attending a small distributor summit actually in St. Louis. And George Crump, I think you may know George, was doing a presentation talking about all the companies that he had started and sold and started and done things with. And he made a statement. This was on a Saturday. He made a statement that said, it's hard to move forward if you have a path of retreat. And I thought about that over the weekend, and I went in Monday morning and resigned and didn't have a job, didn't know what I was going to do. And then a friend of mine who does M&A called me up and said, you know a lot of people, a lot of stuff about equipment and processes, distributors and market sales trends. He said, why don't you come try doing M&A? And so I started in 17, but doing it ever since and just having a ball.
Well, that's quite a jump, right? From what you've done historically over to M&A. And I know M&A often gets a bad rap. Matter of fact, I got a few things queued up on my soundboard, right? So when somebody mentions mergers and acquisitions, a lot of times the audience does this little number here, right? Let's say, oh, that's not fair. And sometimes if you're a member of the company being swallowed by an acquisition, you hear, ooh, that's kind of nasty. So obviously we don't like hearing those things, and that brings us to the topic of our show today, which we call M&A, the Reaper, and you. And so the goal here is to kind of dispel some of the negative myths and connotations that kind of form around the topic of M&A, and we really want to properly define this for our audience. So, Roger, I know a lot of folks equate M&A companies as the touch of death, the grim reaper, and maybe some even call it the last resort. And I think a lot of people blame it for industry consolidation. And while not entirely accurate, it's definitely a viewpoint that a lot of people in this industry share. So, since it's not really a fair way to look at it, how would you respond to someone that sort of has this viewpoint? What do you do to change their mind, these myths? And maybe as a third here, while you're at it, maybe what other myths do you come across in M&A in the circles that you run?
It is a myth because when you think about it, any company out there, I don't care what it is, what they make, what you sell, what you produce, at some point in time, one of two things is going to occur. You're either going to close or you're going to sell. There really isn't any other option. We've seen companies run their business until, the owner literally dies at his desk or something like that, and they have no exit plan and no succession plan. But, a company's going to do one or the other. And so, M&A is actually like a rebirth. It's a way to take a company someone has built that they care about. It's been their passion, their life, their dream. And it's a way to make that thing keep going on, either with a new owner or merging with another company, whatever it may be. So, the idea that it's the end is not really justified very well. And, when something like that happens, part of the process is people don't buy companies to leave them the same. And they certainly don't buy them to see them to go down. They buy them to grow them. So what normally happens is an acquisition, someone gets acquired and that company grows over the next few years. And, there's more staff, there's more equipment, there's new technology added. There's a lot of cool things that can happen as opposed to the other option, which is someone throws the keys on the desk on the way out the door and they lock it, and they go away. So, it's not a good idea or a good thought that that's the end of the world. It's actually pretty much more of a new beginning. The other myth that we run across quite a bit is when someone decides they do want to exit is what the company is actually worth. We always tell everybody that, I can tell you what your company's worth. You can tell me what you think your company's worth, but the market's going to tell you what your company is worth. And those three numbers are never going to be the same. We can have a pretty good idea of it, but one of the things that we do run into quite a bit with people who do want to exit, they come talk to us, is they have a misconception on what their company is actually worth. And that's one of the very first conversations that has to take place. And sometimes, frankly, that's not as easy as we like it to be.
You make a lot of excellent points, right? So, I feel like you did a great job of taking the edge off the conversation. Thank you for that, by the way. We always have to start on that weird note and find our way through it. So, I guess I have to ask the question: why does somebody want to sell their company? What brings them to this point? What are their reasons?
There's generally three reasons. First and foremost is generally retirement. Someone's ran it for a long number of years. They don't have children in the business, or if they do, they don't want to take over the business. They want to exit while the exiting timing is good. Maybe there's buying going on. Maybe they just reached that point where they want to travel more, want to spend more time with their family, their grandchildren. So, first and foremost, it's usually, I just want to enjoy my life now, and I need to do that. I have to get rid of this because it occupies so much of my time. Another time is, sometimes people are just tired of the risk. They want to stay in the business, but it's been rough on them. Maybe they're in a market or a product line that's difficult to sell. They don't have the wherewithal or maybe the money to do what they really need to do to take the company to the next level. So they sell mainly in order to get funding or some backing, maybe from a private equity firm, something like that, so the company can continue and grow. And maybe they stay with it, maybe they don't. And the third one is some people just build a company to a certain level and they want to cash out and they're going to go do it again. I've actually had the pleasure of working with two guys who are on their third companies now because they build, they come up to a certain level, they have fun, they sell it, and they want to go start a brand new one because their passion in life is creating. It's not running. So they just take something, start it, build it, sell it. So those are the primary ones. But, the real one that really hits what we see most of the time is people just want to exit because they've reached that point in life. They want to enjoy what they've made.
So it sounds like retirement is probably the most common. I was about to make a bet on maybe the serial entrepreneur because that actually sounds like a pretty exciting and exhilarating path for M&A. But so it does sound like it's folks looking to retire. Maybe they can't hand their company over to one of their kids, for example. That sounds like one of the primary reasons?
Mm-hmm. That truly is. And sometimes there's kids in the business, but the kids just don't have interest in owning the business. They're happy there. Maybe they like it. Maybe they would like to exit as well. But that's wanting to retire and like say, enjoy the fruits of your labor. And of course, that means you have to do something with the company and you want the company to survive as well. So that's when the discussions have to start taking place.
I gotcha. Now I know for owners that are looking to sell, it's a really tough decision, right? This isn't something that they just wake up one day and say, "Hey, I want to do this." It's got to be a strong mix of emotions, right?
It really is. In fact, we try to encourage people that they need to start thinking about this several years before they intend to do it. If you want to retire when you're 65, then put the note in your calendar that when you turn 62, you need to start thinking about an exit plan because a good exit plan takes a long time to really formalize and strategize if you want to do it correctly. So, and it is a very emotional thing. You're talking about, somebody selling their baby, it's something they've created, they've grown. They've probably got employees that have been with them 15, 20 or more years. That's like family.
Yeah.
And they're worried about them. They want to cash out. They want to take their money, but they want to make sure these people still have jobs. They want to make sure they're taken care of. They want to make sure their benefits stay the same. And it gets really tough. And then you've got the guys or girls, like this is what they come to work every day. So one of the conversations that has to take place is, okay, it's now closing. It's the day after closing. What are you going to do with your life? If you don't have a good answer for that, you might want to rethink selling. Maybe this isn't the time until you decide there is something else out.
That really, really great points. And while I'm not in that point in my career, meaning I can't imagine being in the position, I do have the utmost respect for owners that are struggling to make that decision. You worry about your people, you worry about your customers, you worry about the longevity of your business once you sell. And even if the time is right, all right, those emotions and feelings are still there. So let's say we have an owner that's come to terms with his or her reality and they're ready to move forward. I know that there's a process. There's some sort of system, right, that you take them through. What does that look like? What is that process?
One of the first things we like to do is we obviously have to get a value on the company because as I said, people will come to us and say, well, I think I'm worth so much. And the first thing we say is, okay, how did you pull that out of the air? And most of them will tell us, well, I pulled it out of the air. I think that's what it was worth in my mind, but they don't have any financial justification. And buyers only are going to look fine at finances and your P&L sheet, your balance sheet, your history. That's what they're going to make a decision. So one of the first things we have to do is have to talk about valuation with people, and we have to, do our own valuation. We have to make sure that they agree with that is within a range that they would accept. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes we have to come back to them with the bad news of, they think it's here, and we're saying the market's going to tell you it's here. I can try to offer you a house at $1 million, but if it's a $500,000 house, you're not even going to get an offer.
So is that step one then? So let's say, because I guess people have that misconception often about what their company is worth, right? You just said it.
Very much so. That's the first thing that has to be decided. in the process. We do the valuation. We make sure that everybody's upon agreement. Then what has to do is obviously you have to think about who's the best buyer. You don't want to blast an email out to 1,000 printers out there and say, hey, does anybody want to buy a company that does X, Y, Z that does $5 million in revenue? You just don't want to do that because one, you're going to get a whole bunch of tire kickers. What you want to do is you want to look at the company. You want to define a profile of who the best buyer would be. We want to look at the culture. We want to look at the geolocation. We want to look at the market. How do they go to the market? We want to look at their customer concentration. We want to look at the age. There's a lot of factors that we take into consideration that you say, okay, the best buyer would be someone like that. And then what we want to try to do is go out and find 5 or 10 then you've got people you can bring to the table. Once we get somebody interested in it, of course, we have to share information about the selling company, which is always done under NDAs, things like that. We talk to people, we get some conversations going, we get interest. That generally includes some site visits and some more conversations. Zoom, of course, is a great avenue. It gives us a chance to let people talk about cultures without actually physically going into a facility just yet. And we go through all of those steps, and then we get to the point where a buyer says, you know what, I want to make a run at this. And at that point in time, they give us what's called an LOI, which is a letter of intent or letter of expression of intent. And it basically lines out, I like the company. This is what I'm offering. This is the way I'm going to pay you. This is the way the deal structure would be worked out. When I'm going to buy inventory, what you get to keep off the balance sheet, all the details of it. And we submit that and, to the seller, and we say, okay, is this acceptable? And it either is or isn't. Maybe we bring in a couple at the same time. The LOI gets accepted. Then you go into the fun part of due diligence. And this can take several months because after a letter of intent is signed, basically the seller has to open his doors a lot more to where the buyer can come in and really take a hard look at the company. They can look at the equipment. If it's digital equipment, they have to look at the number of clicks on it, the age of it, are they under lease? All the other details come out, and your attorneys get involved. And that takes up a lot of time. And once you get past that stage, you get to the asset purchase agreement. And that is the final legal document where someone's going to sell the company. That generally takes several revisions. And then, it's decided upon. You get a target date for when you're going to close. And everybody moves toward getting all the paperwork done to get it closed on that day. And that day comes around, funds are transferred. And the next morning, everybody wakes up with new ownership.
Wow.
It sounds fairly simple and it sounds fairly stair-stepped,
Mm-hmm.
but it is very, very.
I was going to say it actually sounded like a lot, right? So let me see if I can recap from memory what you said here. There's the valuation, there's profiling the buyer, there's the hunt for the buyer, right? There's those conversations that take place to affirm whether or not this is going to work, the letter of intent, due diligence, there's your purchase agreement, and finally, after it's all said and done with closing. Did I get all that right?
You got it right.
Ooh, wow. Okay, so there's a ton, and there's no wonder there's a need for an advisor to help you through a process like that. If you were to take a deeper dive into this process, Roger, what are some of the key points or metrics that you specifically look for that really help make the deal?
First and foremost is the culture. It's very important that a company, when they're selling, particularly and very important to the seller, the owner, is that as little as possible changes. It'd be nice to leave everything the same. That's probably not going to happen because obviously, again, the buyer wants to buy it to improve it and grow it. So something's going to change, but it's going to be on the positive side of things. So one of the first things, that needs to be done is you have to look at a cultural fit. You want to make sure they're in the same markets. They sell the same channels. You can't put a company that sells direct and try to put them with a company that sells through the trade. It's a clash. They're going down different channels. So you have to look at second thing we have to look at generally is the geolocation. Sometimes a company that is for sale, we'll say one in Kansas, okay, we need to find someone that wants to acquire something in Kansas. That might be someone that's over in Missouri. It might be in a border state because they want to make an acquisition relatively close, they within driving distance. And then there's other people who might be on the east or west coast that say, I'd love to have something in the middle of the country and have another footprint there. I don't have to ship over the Rockies or the Andes. I can work with that. So, geographic location comes into play. We have to look at the products and the markets and how they go to market. You don't have to do the same product line, but it probably needs to be a complementary product line. Like right now, say a digital printer is probably not going to buy a commercial printer because he doesn't want to go into offset. He's a digital printer that's doing black and white and color work and flyers and postcards might buy a digital wide format shop because it's still digital and it's still promotional in nature. So we have to look at those things and make sure that there's complementary products and thought trains in place to really make it look good. We want to look at the customer concentration and what types of customers they are. If they're selling direct, the customer base is going to be different. We always tell people that, there's two ways to look at your house. You want to look at your financial house and your physical house. Physical house meaning what's the shop floor look like. Financial house is what does your P&L look like? You would be surprised at when we get financials to look at how crappy they are. We got line items that make no sense. We got duplicate line items.
People pay on their condos.
Yeah, we got condos out in Denver. We got Corvette. Like, okay, you got to clean all that stuff up.
Yeah.
So, one of those, that's something that has to take place. And then, of course, we have to look at the size of general revenue, and that helps us define, again, what type of buyers that might be interested in that are we dealing with a $2 million company or
Okay, so one of the key points that you hit on really resonated with me because I've got a lot of personal experience in being on both sides of the M&A fence, right?
Okay.
I want to accentuate how critical culture is to the whole transaction. So you can have everything dialed in, like you said. You've got the right product mix. You got great customer synergies. I mean, everything is working really well, but the merger is not going to be successful if the culture aspect doesn't play all the way through. And so I'm going to share a little bit of my experience. I'm not going to name names here, but we'll just say that there were at one point, there were the two largest transactional document printing companies in North America that decided, hey, we're gonna merge. And so they came through and they did this merger. And while the merger was great, the marketing was great, there were a few things. We still acted like Company A and Company B. Matter of fact, the company had two presidents, President A and President B. I won't name names. But the reality is it was so hard to let go of the way things used to be. And matter of fact, that was the sentiment. Well, this is the way we used to do things, or this is the way we've always done things. And it was a real challenge to get people on the same page in terms of, well, let's stop thinking about the way we used to do it. And let's think about the way we should do it. And it wasn't until we started having that conversation that the pieces started moving and things started working together. Because I'll say it took us at least 6 months to a full 2 years really to properly integrate in terms of culture. And, about the time that company was eventually acquired away, some of those cultural issues were still hanging out there, Roger. And so that's just my own personal experience with it. And I can name quite a few others where the culture just wasn't the right fit. Like, for example,
right.
One transaction had basically a customer-facing entity purchase a for-trade-only company with the expectation that they would be able to, take over that part of the market as well as dealing with direct customer sales. And in this world that doesn't fly. And so it was not a failure, but man, it was really tough.
I know exactly which one you're talking about. And you're right, and it brings up a very good point because, when you've got two entities, let's say we're past, most of the conversations and we're maybe even into a letter of intent. You really got to have those conversations with both parties to say, okay, we think we like each other. We kind of do things the same. Let's talk about what's going to change. Okay. We're not talking about firing customers or anything like that, but let's just talk about what processes are going to take place. What would the new world look like Who's going to be in charge of that new world? There's various segments of that new world. And let's make sure that all those personalities don't immediately have a conflict. Because if you're talking oil and water and you haven't even got to into the due diligence stage, you better put on the brakes. There's something's not going to go very well, or you're going to create a deal in a marriage that is not going to be very pleasant for either party later down. And you got to remember that a lot of deals, it's not just the guy gets a check when he sells the company and rides off into the sunset. A lot of these deals, there's an earnout based on multiple years. And that means that company has to not only survive, it has to grow. If that oil and water, if that's a bad mix, that can affect the guy's paycheck over the next couple of years. So, those conversations, they really have to take place early on, and you got to make sure you've got that cultural fit. That can burn an organization down in nothing flat.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think there's some other elements we could talk about here too. So, we talked about how critical that internal adoption is for culture, but and what about the customers, right? So they're typically the innocent bystanders in this whole thing. They didn't ask for this, right? They get attached to their supplier and the brand that's part of that supplier that they've known and loved for a long time. There's a real emotional bond there. And I suppose it's impossible to maintain 100% customer retention. That's just unheard of ever, right? I mean, how can you keep a customer confident and happy during the process? Or is collateral damage just to be expected?
And unfortunately, it's probably the latter to a degree, but there's things that can be done. Here's one of the biggest challenges when you're doing this, and this is whether we're working or any broker is working with a distributor or a manufacturer or a supplier, is the level of confidentiality that has to be maintained. Because when you're going into this, when you're talking to these people about getting evaluation, you're talking about, okay, we're going to put a memorandum together, we're going to offer your company for sale. At that point in time, the majority of the time, the only people that are in the loop are the owners. Their staff doesn't know this is going on. Their customers certainly do not know what's going on, and neither one can know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Most of the deals we work with, that's one of their concerns is, how do we keep this quiet in the industry? And our industry's a relatively small world when you get down to it.
It's not so quiet.
Yeah. How do you keep this quiet in the industry so nobody knows about it? Once you get a deal close to being done and they do notify their employees, then part of that planning process and due diligence needs to be, how do we address this with the customer? For sure, the top customers probably need to be visited prior to closing, if at all possible. And if not, immediately after closing. The old guard needs to take the new guard in. They need to do introductions. They need to do a nice transition and a nice handoff. A lot of times the owner will be asked to stay on for anywhere from 3 to 12 months to aid in that transition process, to make sure that nobody gets lost and we don't lose any of the customers, particularly the big ones. Now, again, you commented about, retention. Do you keep 100%? No, because there's always going to be somebody back there that says, I've bought from Bob for 40 years. I'm not buying from Bob now. I'm buying from Pete. Pete's a nice guy, but I like Bob. I also know Tom. Tom's been a friend of mine for 20 years. I'm going to start sending my volume over to Tom because I don't know Pete. There's going to be some of that. But if it's handled right and it's handled as part of the process, then you're not going to lose very much. It can be managed very.
So those are amazing points, and I agree with every last one of them. Again, having done quite a few of these myself. So Roger, let's say that the deal is done, merger complete, synergy savings, all of that is in full swing. What happens next? What does life look like post merger or acquisition?
It's funny because that is the last step, and it's one of the first conversations we have, because a seller needs to understand what life after closing is going to look like. They may be part of the transition period, they may not. It all depends on what they want to do and what the buyer wants to do with them. I've had cases where we closed on Friday, and at 4:00 the owner walked out and nobody ever saw him again. So those things have to be discussed, and owners need to understand what their role is going to be moving forward, if there is going to be one. And if they're not, what is your role going to be in life? What are you going to do with your family? Do you have an idea? Those things need to be considered because it can get pretty lonely the day after closing. If in 3 months you're no longer needed, you wake up in the morning, you don't play golf, you fish, and your wife's saying, don't you have someone to go?
I've heard that story, that same story so many times from folks in the industry that have managed and successfully sold their business. Man, you couldn't be closer to accurate about that. But I mean, it sounds like there's a ton of variables at play in all of this. And I'm curious. Do you have any parting thoughts on this? I think our next segment's about to start. So I want to make sure we're able to kind of close out the thought topic here.
The thing I would encourage everybody to do is first of all, if at all possible, think way in advance. At least 3 years. Again, if you think at some point in time because of either age or rational reason, or you're in a dying market and you think there's a cliff coming, whatever that reason is, back that up about 3 years and start talking to people. Talk to people who have sold. Talk to friends in the same space. Talk to a couple of different brokers. Get an idea of what is the market like. What do you need to do to your company, to improve the curb appeal? Because that's one of the first things that I ought to take a look at. If I've got a year and a half to really make my company look nice so I can sell it, then let's get to work on that. Let's hire some people to come in and tell me what I need to do, and there's people that will do that. What I need to do to my company, both in the financial space, and structural space, and physical space, and clean this up so I get the best. Think about it in advance, plan for it, and then just execute the plan and work with a good advisor. I would highly recommend that. I've talked to a lot of people that try to do it themselves, and as you saw from the conversation for the last 40 minutes, it's complicated. It's a lot more complicated than people think. So, hire an advisor, get some advice on it, and make a plan, work the plan.
So it sounds like I need to get before I sell anything, I'd need to get like the equivalent of an auto detailer for my company before we just go straight into the M&A practices.
Clean the car out before you put it on the park
and vacuum it out a little bit. That's good.
You might want to wash the windows.
Wash the windows. Okay, got it. So it looks like it's time for our next segment here, which is called
Supply Chain Chatter.
Supply Chain Chatter. There it is. So supply chain chatter is where we just kind of talk a little bit about what's going on in the industry. And I think, Alyssa, we've got a little bit of news coming up here at the beginning of May, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we do. So Liftoff will be attending this year's and the final brand chain event.
Ooh, final.
Yes, this is, I believe, a leadership summit, the brand chain leadership summit.
Yeah.
That will be taking place March 6th through 8th of this year in Clearwater, Florida.
So, Roger, are we going to get a chance to see you in Clearwater?
Oh, yeah. I would not miss that.
Oh, awesome.
Always attend those, but all possible. They're great meetings.
Well, I'm going to urge all of our subscribers, everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching, if you've never been to a brand chain event, you have been missing out for the past however many years we've been doing these shows. They are the most incredible shows. It is a very awesome networking event. It's honestly where I keep saying this, I feel like on every episode, but we started our business in brand chain, back when it was PSDA, DMIA, and so we, without brand chain, we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't have the success we have today. And, really excited to see, brand chain, working now with Printing United Alliance, and really eager to see where that goes. But back to the show in May, you got to go to that show. Even if you're not a member, find a way to get there. Look us up. We can't wait to see you there. Let's see. Do we have any other news on our front? Or Roger, do you have anything you want to share news-wise?
I just throw in a quick blip on that because, I've attended that meeting forever. I think I've missed one since they've ever done them. Kind of like the M&A thing. A lot of people are thinking, okay, it's the last leadership conference for brand chain. Oh my gosh, everything's dying. It's not. The brand chain's being merged in with Printing United. This is a fantastic opportunity for both organizations. Granted, this is the last event that we will have under brand chain, but this is going to be a great merger. A lot of good stuff coming out. It is a great meeting. I'll echo your comments about the networking. By far, that is the most fun and most important part of the station. The fact that it's in Clearwater and we're going to have a glass of wine while we look out over the ocean. Okay, that's right. Yeah,
It's work. It's work, Roger. You can't call it anything but work.
yeah.
Um,
I just love those 14-hour days on the beach.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Well, we're going to look forward to seeing our subscribers here. We're going to look forward to seeing Roger there. It's going to be a great time. Oh, and hey, it is now time for our next segment, which is called Memorable Merch. This is where we take an opportunity to let our guests kind of talk about something that's happened in the industry or something that they're familiar with that's been very impactful to them. And Roger, I understand you've got something kind of cool to talk about on today's show.
I did, and I apologize for not having it. I've been traveling. I'm at literally the merch I wanted to show is at another location, so I wasn't able to bring it with me. But what I wanted to talk about, or I was going to show, was a jacket and a coffee maker. And that's going to sound like, okay, what's so blasted hot about that? But, one thing I've learned about merch, and I've been, like say, in manufacturing and on the side of working with vendors for, 50 plus years. I've had a lot of stuff handed to me over the years. I've got more coffee cups and what they used to call trinkets and trash than you care to see. But I go back to, what did somebody give me that I retained that always made me think of them? It doesn't necessarily mean it had to have their name on it, but I never forgot where that came from. And I got a jacket. This is going to sound odd. I got a jacket in 1983 from Appleton Papers because I helped them do a survey. That was it. Just a survey. It was detailed, but it was a survey. Took me 30 minutes maybe to do. I got the nicest jacket. Yeah, it says Appleton. I got the nicest jacket. I still have that jacket in my closet, and I still wear it in the winter. It's a great jacket, but I got it because I helped another company out that was in our space. They sent me a premium piece, not just a coffee cup. And that's always meant really good to me. The other one that did the same thing was from Zycon. The big digital company. Back in probably around 2010, I was invited up to their headquarters up in Chicago to view a brand new piece of equipment that they were getting ready to launch. And I went up and I went through the day tour, and they showed me the equipment. And when I got back a few days later, I got a Keurig coffee maker delivered to my front porch. And I called the guy up that does the marketing. I said, "Why are you doing this? You know me, I'm a consultant. I am never, ever going to buy a Zycon." He goes, "Yeah, but if we appreciate your input, we listen to what you're going to say. We know you're going to talk to other people. We want you to have this." Now, both of those items are relatively insignificant. They're, maybe they cost a little bit, but it was the fact that it was given to me when it really wasn't going to generate a sale. And it just really struck to me that, if you want to create memorabilia and you want to create a memory, make it worthwhile. Don't do a coffee cup.
No squeeze balls, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's always hit me. I've always remembered those two things.
So it's funny. So branded merchandise is incredibly powerful. It can either be what Danny Ross and one of our friends over from Brandfill calls brand fill, like landfill. That's funny. Or it can be extremely impactful. So you just said, what was the year? 1983, Roger, from Appleton. Is that right?
1983. Still have the jacket.
So what is that? That's 41 years ago. That piece of merch is still around 41 years later and is still creating memories, right? It's still there. It's etched in your brain. That's powerful marketing. Branded merchandise doesn't really get the credit it deserves, but the fact is you have all this stuff that sits on your desk, on your shelf, on your wall, wherever it is. I mean, I've got this kind of stuff right behind me. Good Lord, branded merchandise is king when it comes to, to brand and that emotional feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. What I think what makes the difference is some companies understand why you give out branded merchandise. They understand the value of it. And they understand that it's an investment for the future, and it needs to pull people into you. It needs to connect you with a customer or a potential customer. Too many companies consider branded merchandise as a have to, and they hand them out like candy, so they have no expectations of getting anything in return. Well, if you don't expect a return, you're not going to get a return. Pay attention to what you're doing. Give out less items, give out more in better items. you'll have far more impact of it. Most companies don't really think about it when they're doing their brand. That's why they need to work with brand experts.
So Alyssa, take some notes over. No more coffee cups. No more squeeze balls.
This is actually exactly why I've been trying to convince you guys to do Liftoff Pizza.
Liftoff. I'm all over.
I think that's where we need to go next.
So 41 years from now, somebody's going to have a Liftoff Commerce pizza oven, is what I'm hearing. Roger approves. I love it. I don't know where we're going with this show, but we always have fun. I told you we would. So unfortunately, we've got to keep moving. It's time for our next segment. And before that, before we give Roger a parting gift, we're going to talk about tech trends. Tech Trends is the segment in the show where we talk about all the cool things that might be going on, either technology related or, who knows, efficiency, innovation. All of those things kind of fall under that umbrella. And Roger, I understand you've got some trends that you're kind of seeing kind of nestled in with the M&A space. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. We have a lot of people ask us, what's hot, what trends are out there right now. And, there's a big space, you've got business forms, you've got commercial printing, you have digital printing, you have dye sublimation, you got promotional products out there, wide format signing, you got this massive gamut, labels, flexible packaging. Well, that spectrum is, here to here. I mean, it's massive. And, what we've noticed is a definite trend toward the better the newer technology, the digital, the flexible packaging, digital imaging on flexible packaging, digital imaging direct to substrate, not going through another middleman process of some sort. Those are really drawing a lot of interest. One of the ways we gauge that is by how many calls we get from private equity firms. And we get a call a week from a private equity firm saying, do you have a company that does this or is in this space? Because these guys are really looking hard at the printing and promo space right now. They're getting very anxious about it. So, what we've seen is probably what a lot of people would expect. Some of the printing segments are, still retreating. They're declining in nature and everything. But there's a lot of new stuff coming up. It's still going to make the print and promo and graphic space a wonderful, wonderful space to be in for the coming years.
Those are really good points too. And I know one we talk about technology and M&A, and I know this isn't a trend, but it's something that you just made me think about. When you're buying another company, it's very common for them to have their own like ERP, order management system. Sometimes it's a homegrown system. Sometimes it's something they bought off the shelf. And I mean, we didn't necessarily talk about that in the line, but I think it probably fits into culture somewhere. What do you see nowadays, with folks buying other folks? Are they targeting companies that are leveraging the same systems, or are you finding that it's just kind of across the board? What insights do you have for us there?
When it comes to distributorships, I would say there is a trend toward trying to acquire someone that's on the same system. I see that, or they're at least acquiring someone that can be transposed over to their system very quickly, very easily. And of course, that means the system they're using has to be, it has to be new. You're not going to find someone on a very old system doing a lot of migrations over to an old system. So a distributorship that has a relatively new platform can assimilate the old platforms on fairly easily, or certainly the same platform on easily. Manufacturers, not so much. They all want to stay on the same system over time, but they also know that if a $100 million manufacturer buys a $20 million manufacturer, that transition might take a year. And they're okay with that slow process because what they want is the revenue. They want the revenue. They want to grow the business. They want the product line. They want the customer base. That's more important than, the ERP system is the necessary change that has to take place. So what the other company has doesn't always necessarily come into play that much. You wouldn't be surprised how many companies we have come to us of size that don't have a good system. It's amazing.
I feel like we could probably craft an entire show just around the topic of the acquisition and merger M&A part of technology. Honestly, there's so much that gets kind of folded up in there. Do you guys hear that? Oh, you know what that means? It's time for
Cash or
Stash and Swag. All right. right, this is the segment of the show. I think this is my favorite segment of the show, where we get to award Roger a cool prize for being such a wonderful guest on our show. Roger, what are you betting for? Do you want some swag? Do you want some cash? What are you hoping to get off that wheel?
No, I want swag. I'm for the swag, because there is one thing that I probably left out is, it's not always what you get, but it's who you get it from. And as you well know, Andrew, I have tremendous, tremendous respect for you and what you've done with your company in the industry. I guarantee you, whatever you send me will be utilized, and just out of my pure respect.
Oh man, I think we need to give Roger everything on that wheel for that moment. All right. So here's how it's going to work. You just count down from 3, and Alyssa will spin that wheel as hard as she can.
All right. That's not necessarily very hard, but
All right. Give us a countdown, Roger.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Where's it going to land? It is a $50 gift card. Well, guess what? We're going to bundle that $50 gift card with some swag. How about that? We will make sure you get what you came here for. Well, Roger, I want to thank you so much for being an incredibly wonderful guest on today's show. You've shared so many incredible insights about the world of M&A that, even though I've done a few of these, it really helps bring all these things to the forefront. And I really hope for some of our subscribers that are listening to your advice that they seek you out, contact corporate development associates. If you're just thinking about selling or buying, Roger and the team over there at CDA are absolutely top-notch. Guarantee it. All right. Well, thank you for everybody. Thanks for watching our show, and we'll see you next time.